Welcome to Settled on the Field, a bird's eye view of the sports landscape. From Little League, travel sports, high school athletics to recruiting, NIL, and walk-ons. Join us on a rocket ship to the next level. Welcome to Settled on the Field.
Today we're joined by a special guest. We are joined by Dr. Theresa Larson. She's a former Marine Corps engineering officer, author, speaker, from what I understand, a decent softball player, co-founder of MovementRx, which is where I met her. So how are you doing, Dr. T?
Doing good today. I'm glad it's Friday and just it's a little more low-key day for me. Glad to talk to you guys.
Thanks for joining us. We're super excited to have you here.
Welcome. Yes, we're excited.
So when I met Dr. T, it was, if I get this right, I was joining a 21-day movement and mindfulness challenge through MovementRx. We covered well-being, self-care. We had established an all-important tribe, which was definitely needed for me at that time. Established some community and some people I could talk to on a routine basis. She works to empower people with the knowledge and tools to achieve lifetime physical and emotional freedom. That's a little my spiel on MovementRx, but what could you tell us about MovementRx?
Well, there's a lot to tell about MovementRx, but we are a human performance company that helps organizations change their well-being culture, starting with the leadership on down. So we've pivoted a couple times. But that is really our mission, and the problem we solve is leadership well-being, because burnout, chronic stress is a problem, and oftentimes it comes from the leadership not paying attention, being aware enough to provide the resources they need to not only themselves but their people.
I saw you reference something about the performance of the leaders after they joined. It was like a study where some of them were working out and some of them were not, and it was a lot of mindfulness was going on. And it really, like, without telling the employees, they really noticed the major change in the leaders.
Yes. So interesting enough, obviously companies want to know that they're improving productivity. They want to retain people, right? Because if they don't, it costs them a lot of money, and they also want to increase engagement. And of course, there are some companies that really don't care. They work with us because they do care about those things, but they work with us because they just want to help their people. But you kind of have to feed both. But we found this study that showed it was around 5% of this organization, which was their leadership, did this meditation study. And every morning for 8 weeks, they meditated for 20 minutes. But so they tracked the outcome measures they tracked in the entire company, not just with this 5%, but the entire company was productivity, depression, anxiety. And so what they found was that 5% of the leaders did improve their productivity, decrease levels of depression, anxiety. But the interesting thing was nobody else in the company knew that they were doing the study. They kept it quiet. I think it was a blind study, which means no one else, there's a blind study is actually a really good way to study a group of people or something, but the employees did not know that their leadership was doing this study, yet their productivity, depression, anxiety also improved over the course of the 8 weeks. And so I always ask groups when I'm speaking about this, like, what do you think that means? And it really means like, okay, they're the leaderships because they were feeling better and they were showing up as better versions of themselves. It impacted everyone else. It's called the social contagion, right? Their example, their effect impacts people around them. And I think a lot of leaders aren't aware of that. They aren't aware that how they show up to their families, their people makes a difference. Like just your body language, right? How you approach someone, the things you talk about, matter.
It is amazing how, like, even just going for a walk in the morning or a walk like in the middle of the day can just completely change your whole outlook on the day. Imagine doing all the other extras that you're providing. It probably makes a huge difference.
Yeah, it does. We found, and that's really with MovementRx why we started in the physical therapy space, doing human performance for doing one-on-one care for those that do CrossFit and high performing type training, and athletes. But we got kind of burnt out from doing that kind of work. and growing that kind of work. And we did some corporate wellness around the pandemic time. And that's when we started our virtual programs too, which were great for the time, but we still found that over time people would fall off, right? Like you do it for 21 days, you do it for 90 days, but you'd fall off. Corporate well-being programs, we do these in-person trainings and sometimes and virtual, and the people would fall off. And we found with the organizations that a lot of leadership wouldn't do it with the people. They would just expect their people to do it. And I was like, oh hell no, this isn't how, I'm not doing this. Like I'm not gonna just be the person that provides these programs and doesn't get buy-in from the top down. I don't care about, like, the money matters to a degree, but like I need people to make a change in their life. So when we started to really dial in leadership well-being as part of leadership and development and make it like a need to have versus a must have for the well-being of the company, we had a lot more success with buy-in and the conversations we have. So we actually now really feel like we're solving a problem. When we were doing virtual programming, we were solving a problem in the short term for people, right? Like the program you did, Bill. But we had to make a choice, right? Are we going to do this for individuals, or are we going to do this for company cultures? And so we decided to lean into company culture shifts because that's where people spend a lot of their time. And that's where we seem to have the most success. So it's been really fulfilling.
That's a big problem for probably everybody. They get into a mode, they're exercising, they're doing their mindfulness, they go awesome for 90 days and then something happens. You go on vacation or
Yeah.
work gets crazy and you fall off. So
Yes.
what's your tip? I would love to be able to fix that problem. If you can bottle that.
Yeah. No, it's not. So it does happen, right? We're human beings. There's an ebb and flow. Like we have to kind of see our body, our life as seasons. The thing is, though, a lot of us can be so rigid around our goal setting. Like I call them rigid Randys. It's like you have to train and meditate 7 days a week. Or if you you did 90 days, but if you went on vacation and because you took a week off, it's all over. Like you have to start all over. And then it takes you months and months to get back on the bandwagon. I think people are just too rigid with their thinking and not giving themselves grace, right? To just, you're going to you have to have flexibility. And so, and sometimes when you do a program, like the one we did with Bill or the 90-day, those are more intensive. And so after that's done, right, you stick to what worked, but maybe you don't do as much of it, right? Maybe you do just mobility moving forward. But I always tell people, pick one thing to do, one thing. Maybe you do this 90-day program, right? Or you get on this really good exercise kick and then you fall off it. Okay, well, pick back up. Continue back up when you get back. Even if it's not the same intensity, maybe give yourself a goal of working out 4 days a week, but you know that 2 days, give yourself flexibility because things might come up. So even if you get 2 days in, right, you're still finding success. So that's key, is giving yourself flexibility. Like I traveled last week and I was sick and I had every intention. I brought my running shoes, clothes, but I felt like absolute dookie. And I had to still perform though. So I gave myself the grace of not exercising. I walked a lot, so that was nice. But the other ways, the other things I did for myself was I just made sure I ate really well. Like I ate good food. I went to the grocery store and bought myself good food and fruit, right? So that was my kind of 1%, if you will. One thing, 1%, 1 degree, whatever you want to, however you want to look at it. Like, what's one thing you can commit to today to make yourself better? Even if it's not, you fall off the exercise bandwagon. Okay, well, what's one thing you can do today to help yourself? It's not all over. Hopefully that helps.
That's all great. You may have heard we started a little nonprofit called Vets to Refs.
Yes, I love it.
We're super excited, and we're going to work with veterans and first responders and their families to help with the shortage of officials throughout the country. But we also want to support them. So we want to help them do things to become better officials, and it's kind of an overwhelming thing to become a sports official if you have never done it before. So we're going to have some videos and practices they can do. So as we move on to the rule of the day segment, just thinking about baseball and softball, umpires, they're squatting a lot.
Uh-huh.
And then they're coming out of that squat very quickly, kind of almost like an explosion to get out to their position. And knees, do you have like a warm up for knees that you could kind of suggest for our umpires?
Well, yes, actually, I love, so I consider umpires, referees, like the officials, like the other athlete on the field.
Mm-hmm.
They need to warm up and do all the things that the athletes are doing too, because they actually have a tough job because they're like umpires are holding a position of a squat or a hinge for a long period of time. So the things I would suggest for umpires is that when they're squatting, the first thing, so first of all, it's fixing your movement pattern. To help with a proper squat, what you want to do is make sure you squeeze your butt and drive your hips back and your knees out. So if they have their feet flat on the ground and their knees are out, their hips are back, right? That's going to be a better position versus knees straight forward or in. Now,
Okay.
I don't think I've seen many umpires in my day with, I wasn't a biomechanist at the time. If I was still pitching, I'd probably be scrutinizing a lot of the officials about their
Mhm.
form. But that's the key is like when you squat down, you drive your hips back, like you're shutting the door and you drive your knees out. So you can put your hands on your knees, but you're supported. Your low back is supported with your glutes back, right? And your knees are out, which means you're recruiting your hips. So that's key. And then the other thing that officials want to think about or umpires is like their feet are the hands of the ground. You want to make sure you're like screwing your feet into the ground and creating an arch in your feet so that your feet aren't flat. So no matter what your feet look like, you still want to create an arch. Like I have really flat feet. My feet are
Mhm. Me too.
not awesome. They're awesome,
I've got
but
a big
they're
arch.
okay. So yeah, like you want to even though you have a big arch, you still want to kind of create activation in those feet. So that's the first thing. And so that means when they're ready to run or move, they're in a more position of, like I call it like a warrior or fighter stance. They're in a better position to move quickly versus a weak position where their knees are forward or slightly in, right? And when I say knees out, I want the knees to track with the little toes versus the big toe. So the other thing that an umpire is going to want to do is work on like things like toe touches, where their legs are straight, reaching down and touching their toes and coming back up, touching their toes and coming back up, just to warm up their posterior chain or the backside of their body. And then also do some active hamstring stretching. So this this type of stretch where I'm holding my foot and I'm pushing my foot into the air and I'm really stretching out, like my hamstring is really activating. It's called proprioceptive neural facilitation, that kind of stretch. It's a much more proven type of stretching before a game. So imagine yourself laying on your back, you're holding your foot, you're pushing your foot into the air, right? Pushing it into your hand, trying to elongate your leg for about 6 seconds, and then you relax and let yourself passively stretch, right? And then you activate again for 6 seconds and then relax for 6 seconds. So you kind of do that for 10 reps and then do the other side. And that kind of activation, relaxation stretch is really good for the backside of your body. So those are the two big ones I would say would be helpful.
Yeah, those would be great warm-ups. They don't have a lot of time usually, so just two
Yeah.
real simple warm-ups to do.
Yes.
Um, So we're not going to get into an official rule today, but I'd also like the mental side of things, like looking forward to the next play, or like we as officials, we miss calls. Sometimes it's really hard. It's a big play and you want to beat yourself up over it, but is there any mental tips you might have to kind of look forward? I started listening to your book. It's wonderful. I was bawling, but it's super
Oh,
exciting to hear about your story and like looking forward and just always having a plan. So one of the things we talk about with vets to refs is having like your day's sort of planned. Like when you might work a job, you get home, you have nothing to do. But if you're an official, you might have a game that night. So just like a student athlete is in school all day and they use the motivation of that game for later in the evening to keep their focus. So just kind of like a tip for our veterans and our umpires to just kind of look forward and always have a future goal in mind, maybe, or like you had the when you were training, just the 1% rule, something along
Yeah,
those lines.
well, what I would say is on the mental health side, mental performance side, one of the most a valuable tool I wish I had as a student athlete was mindfulness and meditation. I really wish I understood what those even meant or how important they were. And also, I think when you practice mindfulness and meditation, it also helps your visualization. But, if you're umping at night or reffing at night, like you have to come down off of that high you get. Either way, like whether there's a big play that you made or lost, you missed it, there's still this high or low feeling that you're going to have. There's still something that happened. And so how do you deal with what happened? I didn't know how to deal with wins or losses. Like I, of course, want wins are fun because everyone acknowledges you as a pitcher and you're like the best thing ever. But when I lost, I felt like the worst thing ever. And my whole self-esteem was revolved around that. And so the thing is that what's really important is that umpires, student athletes start to practice mindfulness, which is actually the act of just being aware in a given moment. Cut out all the other distractions. When you're umping, you're umping. Try not to have your phone on you or thinking about your to-do list. Like be present with each pitch, right? And then when you're working, your other side job, right? Be present with that job. You're not going to be present 100% of the time, but
Sure.
do your best. But then use meditation. I would say start meditating 5 minutes a day and work your way up to 20 minutes a day. But like start with 5, right? And that could last a while. But just getting used to practicing the act of being present and letting your mind, all the things on your mind go. It's actually hard, but umpires have to think about it. Officials have to think about it like, oh, you're going to the gym and training your body. It's just as important because what that'll do is entering a game, you'll be less anxious, less stressed anyway. And the game will heighten your stress, but at least you won't start your stress levels up here. You'll start them down here. And then after the game, utilize mindfulness, meditation, at least mindfulness. After a game, I probably wouldn't be meditating unless sometimes I do. Sometimes after big events, I will. But be present with like when you go out to eat or when you come home, like doing one thing, being present to your little ones, being present to what's coming up for you versus trying to cover it up with alcohol, let's say, or just a bunch of TV or food. So I think those two tools, mindfulness is like a way of life, really, the art of being present. And meditation is the practice of being present, training your attention. And the more you do it, the less stressed physically and emotionally you will feel at a given moment. So when things do happen, you can come off it a little bit more efficiently.
Awesome.
That was a great question, Jeb, about for umpires and the stretch they should do, because when I'm sitting here thinking about what what do I think would be the hardest referee or official position, I think it's the umpire. That position, to stay in that position for that long would be very difficult on the body. That was a great question and great answer. Thank you so much.
So Liz, we'll pass it over to you for Beyond the Bench.
So, on our last episode, we spoke with Coach Banks, and he mentioned something that I wanted to bring up because we didn't talk about it for a long time, but that was being comfortable when you are uncomfortable. So my tip today is for those students out there that know they want to go on to play sports in college, to get out there and make yourself uncomfortable. Go to those sporting camps, even when you're a freshman, to get used to it. You're going to be uncomfortable. But you're going to be uncomfortable the first time you go, no matter what, even if you're a senior when you go. So my tip is to start going a little bit earlier when you're a little bit younger so you can get used to speaking to coaches, performing in front of the coaches. But my question for you is, I noticed on your bio that you say you're a little bit of an introvert. And so you have to put yourself out there, and you've started speaking in front of all these people and telling your story. So what is your tip for these student athletes that are trying to get out there, putting themselves out there? You kind of have to act as if a little bit. So how did you make
Sure.
yourself comfortable in those situations?
Well, that's a really good, you picked up on something really important that I didn't really know about myself until later on in life. It wasn't until my mindfulness meditation therapist told me to read the book Quiet by Susan Cain. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is me to a T. Great book to read. And it's, I think any student athlete out there would really love that book. There's some great case studies in there and information. But I think it was powerful for me to know. So what happened in my young adult life was as an athlete and even as a Marine, and then early on in my professional career, I found myself like after these big events or games, I feel so tired and burnt out and like almost to the point where I just got really depressed. Like after like a long speaking seminar or even a long weekend of playing ball, even if we won, I just felt so like, get away from me, everyone. Like I don't want to be around people. I need space, but I felt like something was wrong with me, and I knew that, in school, like I had to put myself out there. My dad, was always like, someone else out there is out there training and you're not. So it was like this. So I was always practicing pitching in my backyard. But I didn't know I was an introvert until probably like 8 years ago. And it made sense to me why after big events, I needed to down regulate and I needed to give myself the space, or after big, long travel days, I needed to give myself space. And what I would tell young student athletes is it is important you can perform, if you're introverted and feel like people kind of wear you out quickly, or games wear you out. They're fun, but they wear you out. And you maybe don't get energy from people. That's okay. That is a strength. And sometimes you don't want to speak up. That's okay. Because oftentimes introverts like to sit back and listen, get all the information, and then speak up. But just know that you're capable of performing. And it is important to put yourself out there. And putting yourself out there will make an introvert a lot more uncomfortable than an extrovert. But that just means that you have to give yourself the space after you do that to relax and to have that quiet time. And that is truly where the mindfulness and meditation can be so powerful, as it gives you that chance, gives yourself permission to have that space. So that's something I really wish I knew, is how to give myself that space after a big event performance. Because I love to speak, but I get tired. It gets me tired, and I have to make sure I come home and have peace. Like I traveled a bunch last week. I was sick. I gave a 4-hour seminar with John. And when I came home on Friday, I turned off my phone for 56 hours. I was like, not looking at it. I'm just like, not doing it. I'm living in the mountains. Nobody really needs to contact me. And I thought about it, right? Like, yeah, there are people that are going to want to do play dates with my kids or want this or that, but I don't need to respond. And I think with kids, right, like student athletes, like give yourself the permission to put your phone down. That is not, having your phone in hand is not down regulating. You need space from all of the stimulus. And that's been a very powerful tool for me, because no longer I can perform all day as long as I give myself the next day. And I can still perform if I have to the next day. I just need to make sure I get good sleep, and that there is light at the end of the tunnel of performance. Like I give myself that quiet. But it is like I tell my boys, like they're still really little, so 3 and 6, but I'm like, being uncomfortable is when you're living, It's like this is just, and they're like, whatever, mommy.
Those are the fun times.
Yeah, they're kind of, you know, my little boy the other day, he fell down and scraped his knee really bad. And I was like, what do you do when you fall down? He's like, get back up. And I'm like, yeah, just get back up, buddy. You're fine. Like it wasn't hit your head. You just scraped your knee. Um, but yeah, being uncomfortable is when you know you're living. Just make sure you give yourself that downtime.
You had mentioned some of the programs that I went through with MovementRx, and you're transitioning away from that a little bit, but I did want to let you know that I have definitely benefited from it and continue to benefit from it, I would say. The tribe is important, but just so I could throw this out there, like I did a 21-day challenge, and I got introduced originally to mindfulness and meditation. And then I followed that up with a 90-day challenge. And the 90-day challenge was like, let's say 3 out of the 4 months right before my baby daughter was born. So it was prepping me for the wild world that was coming ahead. And I did a squat challenge. So now I can comfortably bend over, pick her up and all that. So it definitely helped out. But on the physical therapy side, like I've had back surgery and toe surgery and shoulder tightness from a surgery there. So all of those things have definitely improved over time. And while I slowly just do the one thing at a day or, get something in.
Yeah.
I even still have this that I take on the road, little band exercises.
Love it.
Yeah, but I think it's helped with the mindfulness and meditation side, help with the visualization, which you had just mentioned. So I guess that's my question to you is, could you touch on visualization a little bit more? I know that for me, and I'll throw that at you, but for me, I just use one word for anything that's big coming up. I just say dominate in my head. So it's a mantra and then visualization. So.
Yeah, I love that. As a pitcher, actually, I would I think it's important for coaches to understand this and athletes, like, instead of thinking of all the cues to what you need to do to improve your pitch, just think of one. Right? Snap your wrist, open your hips. Like, I tried to not overwhelm myself. And also when I became a coach, pitching coach, and then started doing movement and mobility and teaching CrossFit, it was like just giving an athlete one cue so they don't get overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. But visualization actually is a lot more powerful than I think people realize. There's, when you're like before a game, or before a big meeting, or before a big conversation, taking space to actually go through the motions of every aspect of that meeting. Now, it's not going to go out as planned always, there's always, but like going through the game, going through the team you're playing, and like the pitches that you want to throw and what those pitches feel like, and literally imagining each pitch in terms of the type of pitches you throw, you catching a line drive, throwing it to first, whatever it is, like going through the motions of seeing yourself be successful in the game. It's just like in a meeting now or in a presentation, I always take a moment to like imagine myself up there confidently presenting. I don't use my notes at all. And when I first stopped using my notes, it was a little daunting, but I was like, it's so freeing too. And because I used to be tied to my notes because I was so nervous, especially years ago. And it's like so interesting to see the transition for me. But like I have to visualize myself up there and even the conversations I have. And then, I think with relationships too, like before I go into a big conversation with a friend or a husband, it's like I visualize what I want to say and how it's going to go down and how I want to be calm in it. So that really helps. And there's actually some research around people who visualize, for example, who've had a stroke and who visualize themselves going through the motion of doing a bicep curl or a squat, like just them thinking through the actual movement will build strength. Not obviously a ton, right? But like it'll still improve their neural pathways to that movement.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that answer. I know you were sick this travel session, but what are some of your go-to things for staying fit while you're traveling? I know it can be, it can interrupt you and you still want to get something in, but you know, do you have anything that you just, you know, you're going to pull off the shelf as air squats or?
Yeah. So what I do when I'm traveling is if I do get to run, because I've started training for a big old mountain pass run. So, you know, that goal alone, just this goal of having this run I'm training for, when I do travel, I look for parks and things. You know, it forces me to find parks to run in and that's fun, but not all of the time not all of the places will I have the time to do it. Like I was in Vegas this last year and I'm not running around Vegas, you know, it's just I have done that in my earlier years, and I wouldn't say I was completely with it. Um, but now, like I go to a Tabata. It's called a Tabata, which means you do 20 seconds of an exercise and 10 seconds of relaxation. And I'll do that for 7 to 10 minutes. And I'll do squats, or I'll do push-ups, or I'll pick 2 exercises literally. And I'll just do those, like alternate 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off. And I'll do it for 10 minutes. And I'll do that in my hotel room. And because I cannot stand hotel gyms. Like I just can't stand.
They're kind of gross for sure.
They're gross, but they're also like, there's no light usually. I just am not into it. Maybe you go to a gym. It doesn't really matter, but just 7 to 10 minutes, make a commitment to that. And the other thing is, just because I'm traveling doesn't mean I let everything go, like eating wise. Like I know I'll be eating out more, but I'm also, when I eat, I'm really thoughtful about the energy it gives me. Because if I don't think about that, because I have to be on, then I'm hotcakes and syrup and like, all the things that just sound amazing, but like don't necessarily give me the energy I need. I have to think about the energy and what that food is doing for me, which is actually a practice of mindfulness. It doesn't mean I don't enjoy the goodies. I just make sure I do it at a time where I don't have to like be mentally alert. So usually at one meal while I'm traveling, or two, depending on how long it is, I'll just have I'll go and grab the goodies and the dessert, and I'll just do something I wouldn't normally eat. But for the most part, I really try to, like on this last trip, I did eat out, but I made sure I made choices that gave me energy, like fruit, protein, right, veggies. And then when I went to my training, I went to Whole Foods, right? I bought myself a bag of groceries, so I didn't have to go out to eat. And I could just eat in my room and bring that food to my training. And so I had fruit to munch on. I had good water with vitamin C. I had some other packaged meals that I bought, obviously, and soup. But that's very helpful for me. Is like worst case scenario, when you're traveling and you just don't have the space to exercise like you normally, it's okay. Just do your 7 minutes. You can commit to that.
Yeah, you can get that time in for sure.
Yeah, and then commit to eating as healthy as possible. I would say 80% of the time. And it doesn't mean I won't have a glass of wine here or there, but I make sure that honestly, one of my rules of thumb is I make sure I don't have it the day before I perform. I always have it on the latter end because it'll affect my sleep. And I will only have it if I'm with people, right? Like, so I try to make it more of a social thing because I do enjoy it. So there's a compromise there. It's going to affect my sleep. People out there might be listening. Like I had some person ask me like, man, that's a lot to think about. I'm like, well, look, like I just know now, like I study this stuff where I want to feel good and I want to perform well. And because I want that, I have to make myself uncomfortable by not necessarily eating all the yummy foods that I'd want to eat right away, but I can manage it. Like I can do really healthy foods, which are yummy too, but like I'm just conscious of what those foods do for me. And I think about the long-term result versus like the short-term satisfaction, which is really important. So hopefully that helps.
That helps me. I know you touched on nutrition and exercise, but you did mention going to parks, and it just made me remind me of a story. I was in Louisiana on travel, and I went to a park, like I had an hour to kill or something like that. So I'm walking around this lake, and there's a beautiful wooden trail all the way around it, and you get to the far side, and then all of a sudden there's a sign there that's like, danger, no swimming, alligators. Like, I've been within a foot of this water for like 45 minutes. You might want the sign on the other side too.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I went to, I found a park in Milwaukee, and I was like, I did a run there. Wouldn't say it felt great because, after traveling in an airplane and going for a run, it just didn't really feel great, but I was glad I did it. Then I found some trees and I was like, oh, I'm going to climb some trees, and had some fun climbing some trees. But then I also bit it on a tree. I was like, there was some tourists coming down the walkway with their cell phones, and I went to like run up and like do a kind of a matrix, like up to a branch, and totally biffed it. And they were, taking pictures. It was quite funny.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Hey.
They were taking pictures of you?
Yeah. Laying on the ground, like
someone falling out of a tree, you got to get that.
Yeah. Somebody just fell out of that tree over there.
Yeah.
Hey, Dr. T,
That's great, though.
That
sounds fun.
About the mountain run.
Yeah. So this mountain run is called Imogene, and it's the mountain pass between Ouray and Telluride. It's 17 miles, and it goes from 8,000 feet to 13,500 feet.
Whoa.
And so it'll be a hike run. I'll just say that. But yeah, what I love about it is, this is the other thing that you have to think about with exercise, right? It doesn't have to be all doom and gloom. I don't like running 17 miles at all. That's not what excites me. What excites me is the beauty of being in the mountains and going on this extremely challenging course, but like being in the mountains. Like, I'm not running on the side of a road. It's really boring. Like, it makes me happy to be in the mountains. That's why I moved here to Durango. So
hey, we're all in Indiana, so come on.
No, we moved here for purpose intentionally, but like running, so it forces me to get out on the trails and run here in Durango. And it also makes me excited to be in the mountains. And I look forward to that. Like, someone invited me to do this half marathon, and I don't really want to do a half marathon because it's all on pavement. I'm like, I want to be in the mountains.
Yeah.
And so I don't care if I'm first or last. I'm definitely not going to be first. I'll tell you that. I'm not like, but I just want to do it because
that definitely sounds fun.
Yeah, it makes it brings me happiness. So you have to remember that exercise can make you happy too. It creates happiness. And so if you want to try running, run where it makes you happy. If that's on the side of the road or on a park, do it, right? It makes me happy running in the trails. Like, I have a crazy full life, as most people do. And, I love taking space for myself to go run in the mountains. That's also my quiet, introverted time too.
Wanted to let you know.
That definitely sounds a lot better than running on the pavement.
Yeah.
I want to let you know I just got an email from Per, so he's still doing his work, unless it was automated.
Yeah, well, Per is on it. I'll just say that. John and Will always joke, these two men I work with, they're like, I wish I had a pair. Per, my husband, manages all the operations of our business, which I'm so grateful for. We have a nice balance of what we do. So
yeah, I think that must be nice. All right, I'm going to ask you, we have a question that we ask all of our guests, and it's, what was your favorite sporting event that you've either been to, like as a fan, or maybe as a softball player, or maybe it's just something that you thought of, I'm going to do this in the future. What's your favorite event?
What's my favorite event? Well, actually, my favorite event growing up this still stands out, was going to the University of Washington softball games. Softball is just so much more dynamic than baseball can be to me. and because it's fast, the girls are cheering,
Yeah.
and I looked up to these student athletes so much. And so I just remember my dad taking me to the game all the time. And I remember the smell, I remember the feel, I remember the cheering. So that's I still really love watching softball, actually. It's like the only, because I don't like watching sports too much because I love playing them. And I can kind
I
of,
feel that a lot. I have a rough
yeah,
time watching football a lot of times. Mainly it's because
yeah,
of the changes of the rules and all that. But
yeah. But I do, so a sporting event that I with little kids, like I've really enjoyed watching basketball too, like with my little 6-year-old. Soccer, not so much, but basketball, I really loved watching my 6-year-old play basketball. And even though I stopped playing basketball when I was a freshman in high school, I think that's what I'm looking forward to continue to see him grow up playing it if he wants, or my other one. But yeah, it's just so cute and fun.
Great answer.
There's nothing more electric than a college softball game. Maybe a middle school softball game's a little more electric, but when you have
Yeah,
the full house in the crowd,
yeah,
it's
it's
so entertaining.
incredible. It's incredible. Yeah.
all right, well, we wanted to thank you for coming on, Dr. T. Appreciate your
Thank
time.
you. Thank you
Come back
all.
anytime, and maybe we'll be in the mountains sometime, and we'll find you out there.
Please
It
come
was
visit.
it was amazing to have you on. It's real education. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. I appreciate all three of you.
All right,
Thank you so
thanks.
much. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank
Keep
you.
dominating.
I will.
Don't talk about it, be about it.
Love it.
Those of you interested in donating to Vets to Refs, you can find us at vets2refs.com. Your support of Vets to Refs will not only help veterans and or first responders, but it will go towards alleviating the shortage of youth and high school officials across the country. So please take a look and consider that.
Need more officials. We are asking for your help. Please visit us today at vets2refs.com and consider a donation for our veterans, for our first responders, and for the kids of the future. Thank you for considering us.
Thank you.